Jeanneau owners have a problem, and if you're boat shopping, you may be interested to know about it before you buy one. It seems what's one of the biggest reasons to buy a Jeanneau might also now be one of the biggest reasons not to. This week on Everything You Need to Know, Jeanneau sailboats, big news. Jeanneau was founded in 1957 in France by a hardware store owner named Henry Jeanneau, and he didn't even start with sailing boats like most people did. He started with power boats, but we don't really talk about those around here, so I digress. Henry started out building wooden boats, but as everyone else did, he started experimenting with fiberglass in the 1960s, and by 1964, he came to his senses and started making sailboats. He did well enough at it that in the 1980s his company was bought completely out by an investment conglomerate called Bangor Punta. You may have heard of them on this channel before. These guys bought a lot of sailboat companies in the 1980s. Jeanneau kept producing boats and even decided to take a stab at catamarans. So they created a little side business to do just that. They called it Lagoon. You may have heard of them. In 1995, the Jeanneau business and Lagoon as the side business was sold again, this time to another little company that you may have also heard of, called Beneteau. So yes, Beneteau and Jeanneau are very closely related, and you can kind of see that when you look at them. And they're kind of competing in the same market. Another quick history lesson. Sailboats were all basically the same from the late 60s until the early 90s, when everything sort of changed. The late 90s saw a new breed of sailboat hit the market, and I'm going to use an example to sort of make my point. What I consider to be the granddaddy of all these newfangled sailboats that totally changed the market. The Hunter 380. It's the late 90s, and everyone has a typical 80s sailboat, 11-foot beam, long overhangs at either end, and the boat, of course, gets narrower toward the back, a pinched stern, if you will. This sort of makes the cockpit narrow, and the best you could do for sleeping arrangements aft was a quarter berth that was always full of junk anyway. We slept in the V berth back then. Along comes your dock neighbor with his new boat, a Hunter. Hunter had always made boats like your boat, the Cherubini Hunters, a typical 80s boat. They were great boats, but not this new Hunter. It was wider and taller and very different looking. It had a big bed in the back, and get this, a step-down platform on the back of the boat so your mother-in-law could actually get back in the boat from the water after she fell in. This type of boat was a game changer, and I bring Hunter up because they did such a good job at this design, and all at such a low price. Just about anyone could afford this sort of luxury, which of course made all the old salts hate Hunter because how dare anyone make sailboats easier to use. I joke, but we have to give Hunter a lot of credit where credit's due. They did a great job with the 380, and the sailboat world was changed forever because of boats like that. So enter Beneteau and Jeanneau. They took that easy to live with sugar scoop aft cabin sort of design, and they made it even nicer, better fit and finish on the inside, and with the glasswork, a better rig. They even had Bill Farr design some of the hulls, so they were pretty fast. They sailed well. They gave you 10 things that those 80s boats just couldn't give you. And every new model, they came up with 5 more new things to give you. So what's the difference between Beneteau and Jeanneau then? Well, not a lot. They're owned by the same people. They're made in the same country. Many of them were designed by the same person. And it's been said from time to time that Jeanneau is of a bit higher quality. One example of that is Jeanneau, in some models, opted to glass in the stringers and the structural components of the interior, while Beneteau would just drop in a floor pan and everything was based on that in sort of a non-structural way. So I guess that's points for Jeanneau, and that's just some models. But nonetheless, both brands have boats that circle the planet every year. They sail well, they provide basically the same thing. A very livable boat with excellent sailing characteristics, very easy to live on and live with. What separates Jeanneau for me is where Beneteau sort of falls flat. Styling. Here's a typical Beneteau. It's nice. It's a sailboat. It's a good sailboat. There's nothing wrong with it. But Jeanneau takes all of that Beneteau goodness that you get in those boats and then lets a 10-year-old draw some lines on it. It's fancier. It's got flair. It's got panache. It's got some personality. And I like that. It's the same boat, just somehow better. The mission here at Lady K Sailing has always been to get more people sailing more easily, and I honestly couldn't make these videos without the help of the Lady K patrons. These are folks who give a couple of bucks an episode to really make this all possible. A big shout out to everyone for helping me do this. Thank you so much. If you'd like to help out, please consider becoming a patron. So, Jeanneau, it sounds lovely, right? Where's the problem? Well, the problem lies in exactly what makes them so great. That styling, these fancy lines that they let an artist draw instead of an engineer. The engineer wouldn't dream of overcomplicating a design that works. Well, the artist wouldn't dream of designing something that keeps working. And that brings us to the windows. Jeanneau's party piece. What makes them more than just a run-of-the-mill sailboat. Better than any other white plastic tube with a keel. Those fancy, curvy, wonderful windows. And I know every time I say windows, somebody out there cringes because they're called port lights. Anyway, the windows. Anyone who's owned a boat knows that it's not if a window will leak. It's when. They always leak. And the more complicated the windows, the harder those leaks are to fix. And nothing, and I mean nothing, will ruin living on a sailboat quicker than when it's raining on your bed every time the weather's bad, believe me. Recently, though, Jeanneau started to run out of replacement windows. For the longest time, they kept making them, but now they're running out. Owners with leaky windows are finding it quite troublesome. You see, when you try to fix the leaks, the old plexiglass or Lexan, whatever you want to call it, it tends to break. They're brittle from being in the sun for decades. A corner chips off, or some owners have had it completely break in half when they try to remove them. The windows are slightly complicated on these boats too. When Jeanneau made them, there was a process. The window is formed in plexi, and then they did a film or paint around the edges in black. You see this on the windshield of your car too. That opaque coloring, black in Jeanneau's case, was there for a reason. It's not just styling. And the reason is so the sun wouldn't be able to shine on the sealant or the glue that they used to put the window in, Sikaflex. And we love Sikaflex for boats. It's great stuff. But the sun eats it fast. In direct sunlight, the windows sealed with Sikaflex would leak within a few years. So hence the black lip around the window to shade the Sikaflex. The windows on Jeanneau's are often not flat or straight pieces of plexi. They're all odd shapes, and many of them are even curved. Even the slightest curve, and they become near impossible to reproduce properly. You almost need to buy it directly replaced from the factory, from Jeanneau, who doesn't make them anymore and is sort of run out of stock on all the most common models, like the Sun Odyssey line, the one everybody has. Hey, while I have you guys, don't forget to check out my other channel. It's called History. It's all about maritime history, and the last video was about the Chicago to Mac race, the biggest sailboat race in freshwater anywhere in the world. Super cool. So what's an owner to do with those big, curvy, luxurious, beautiful windows on their Jeanneau when they start leaking? Well, that's a big question in the sailing world today. It's not going to be an easy problem to solve. Some owners have found plexiglass companies that are willing to make new windows if the owner can provide the tooling, which is very specific tooling that was used to make the original windows, which of course the owner wouldn't have access to. Some plexi companies will CNC cut and try to make a new window for you based on the old window, if you can provide them with it without breaking it, which of course means you'll have no glass in your window for the duration of that process. Some of the luckier owners that have the completely flat windows that are just a complicated shape can have them recut by just about any plexi shop. Then the process is pretty simple for those guys. Remove the old window with a heat gun and some extreme care not to break it, and then give it to them as a template and spend forever picking and scraping at all the old Sikaflex to get rid of it, and then install the new window, making sure that they aren't just clear plexi. Remember, they need to have a couple of inches of opaque color around the edges so that the sun never sees the Sikaflex or it'll break down too fast. And further to that, some Sikaflex products or other forms of glue that you might use don't bond very well to plexi, so that black outer border may need to act as a primer as well that the Sikaflex will stick to. It's all kind of complicated, but of course it can be done if you have the flat windows. If you have windows that have a curve, however, things won't be so easy. I don't have a solution for you, and I haven't been able to find one on the internet anywhere. If you've found a solution or have an idea for one, I urge you to leave a comment below this video, and maybe, just maybe, someone will know something. And when Jeanneau owners are Googling this problem later, hopefully conversations below this video will lead them to some sort of an answer. Now, all that said, would you still buy one of these boats? Big picture, the answer might be yes. So maybe the better question is, would you still buy the Jeanneau model instead of the equivalent Beneteau? The Beneteau has normal windows. Same boat. Do you buy the prettier one knowing all of this? For me, the answer is still yes. I can live with the window problem to have the boat that was decorated by a 10-year-old because it's just better. Hey, also, the Annapolis Sailboat Show is coming up. It's October 12th to 15th, and I'm already getting excited. I hope that you guys are too. If you've never been to this thing, it's wild. It's the biggest in-water sailboat show in the world, and it's in Annapolis, which is kind of the hallowed ground of sailing in North America, the Chesapeake Bay. Annapolis is the epicenter. I'll be down there for sure, hanging out with my friend Todd on his masterpiece of a Hans Christian Christina. I hope to see you guys there too. That's all for this week, friends. Until next time, keep the heavy side down, but not too far down. We'll see ya.